Welcome to Life Stories, where we share tales of unexpected twists, profound lessons, and the incredible power of human connection. Today, we bring you a heartwarming story of a nurse named Carla, who, amidst her own struggles, shows kindness to a mysterious man in need. Little does she know, this simple act of compassion will change both of their lives in ways neither could have imagined. Join us as we explore the journey of love, empathy, and transformation that unfolds in this powerful story. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to begin today's story with us. It was a stormy night. A night that seemed to test the very limits of the old Greenfield General Hospital. The wind howled as the rain relentlessly battered the roof, and the thunder rumbled like distant drums, shaking the windows of the building. Inside, the emergency room was in utter chaos. Nurses rushed from one patient to another. Doctors barked orders, and frantic families shouted over the noise of the storm. It was the end of my shift. But there was no end in sight to the frenzy. I had been on my feet for nearly 16 hours, attending to everything from broken bones to fevers that seemed to come out of nowhere. My body ached in protest. But I pushed through, determined to finish my shift strong. My name is Carla Taylor, and I'm a nurse at Greenfield General. It's not always easy. Nursing never is, but it's something I do out of love and empathy. Even when I'm physically and emotionally drained. As I moved from one patient to the next, my ponytail had long since fallen, my hair sticking to my forehead in the humidity. The storm was the last thing on my mind as I heard the familiar sound of an ambulance arriving outside. The red lights of the vehicle reflected off the deep puddles in the parking lot. A signal that more patients were on the way. The emergency room was already at capacity, and I could hear the beeping of monitors and the whirring of machines all around me. I made my way over to the nurses' station, where Dr. Harris, the attending physician that night, called me over. "Carla, we've got a potential cardiac case coming in. Go take a look," he said, his voice strained with concern. I glanced down the hall and saw him, a man, huddled against the wall, soaked through by the rain. His clothes ragged, his face pale. He was clutching his chest, clearly in distress. One of my fellow nurses, Claire, shot him a dismissive glance. "Another homeless guy, probably just wants a warm bed for the night," she muttered under her breath. Something about that irritated me. Everyone deserves care, no matter who they are or what they look like. "He's a patient," I said firmly, cutting off Claire's remark. I didn't have time to argue. My instincts kicked in, and I immediately walked over to the man. Up close, I could see that his lips were tinged blue, his eyes wide with pain. His appearance, rough, worn, was the very image of someone who had lived a difficult life. But as I knelt beside him, something didn't add up. His skin was unnaturally smooth, as if he didn't belong to the world he appeared to be a part of. His clothes were ragged, but his hands, when I touched them, were too soft. Something about him felt out of place. But his distress was real. And that was all that mattered. "Sir, can you breathe?" I asked, my voice soft, but urgent. "Are you feeling pain anywhere besides your chest?" He tried to speak, but all that came out was a ragged groan. I carefully helped him sit up and moved him towards a wheelchair. My body ached from the hours of standing and running around. But there was no room for fatigue now. Adrenaline took over, and I wheeled him through the chaotic my eyes scanning for an available bed. We finally found an empty exam bay, and I quickly drew the curtains around us. The storm outside seemed to have grown worse. Lightning flashing through the high windows, illuminating the man's pale features. As I pressed a towel against his wet hair, I introduced myself. "My name is Carla. I'm a nurse here. I want to help you." He shivered, his voice weak as he muttered, "Thank you." Just as I was about to begin examining him, a voice called from outside the cubicle. "Carla, leave him. We're too busy for freeloaders tonight." It was Claire again, her tone laced with derision. I felt a sting of anger rise in my chest. But I pushed it aside. "I'm handling it," I replied, not giving Claire another thought. This man needed help, and I wasn't about to turn him away because of a snide comment. I listened to his heart. noting the rapid and uneven beats. But nothing life-threatening stood out. I gently held his hand to take his pulse. But again, something seemed strange. His skin was too smooth for someone who had lived on the streets. Someone who had endured the harshness of life. It didn't make sense. But still, I couldn't focus on that. He was in pain, and he needed help. The hours dragged on, the chaos of the continuing around us. I slipped in and out of the cubicle, checking on the man's vitals, administering oxygen, and giving him small, comforting words. Every time I saw him, his condition seemed to improve slightly, though he remained weak. Each time I went back to check on him, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to this man. But for now, there was no time to think. By the time I took a break, the vending machine offered me my usual snack, a packet of crackers and some fruit juice. It wasn't much, but it was something. I paid for it with the last crumpled dollar bills in my purse. My financial situation was precarious at best. My mother, Linda, was ill, and her treatments were expensive. My paycheck barely covered the cost of her medications, and there was never enough left for anything else. I hated to admit how close to the edge I was, but it was the truth. I returned to the cubicle, and the man's eyes fluttered open. He looked weak but conscious. Trying to sit up. "Take it easy," I said gently, pressing a hand to his shoulder. "We think you're severely dehydrated, and your blood sugar is dangerously low." He looked at the small offering of crackers and juice, then met my eyes. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice raw with gratitude. I helped him sip the juice, watching as he struggled to sit up, his body still unsteady. There was something about him, something that told me there was more beneath the surface. Despite his appearance, there was dignity in the way he held himself. His voice, though weak, was articulate and polite. As I continued my shifts, my thoughts drifted back to him. I couldn't help but wonder about his story. Who was he really? How had he ended up in the middle of a storm? In such apparent distress? The storm raged on outside, but within the confines of the I found myself caught between duty and curiosity. I would learn his story someday, I thought, but for now, I would continue doing what I had been trained to do: care for him. The night passed, and the storm finally began to subside. Though the chaos of the emergency room didn't seem to calm, I continued to work, dealing with the same endless flow of patients, trying to keep up with the demands of my job. Every shift felt like it stretched on forever. And yet, every morning when I clocked out, I felt the weight of the world pressing down on me. The exhaustion from the long hours was starting to catch up. But what weighed on me the most was the constant financial pressure I was under. My mother, Linda, was battling a degenerative nerve condition. The treatments she needed were costly, and most of them weren't covered by insurance. I watched as every paycheck I earned seemed to disappear before I could even begin to think about saving or even covering my own rent. I worked every shift I could, often taking extra hours, just to keep up. I had to, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to afford the treatments my mother needed. As the weeks passed, the pressure mounted. I could feel it deep in my bones, the weight of bills that never seemed to stop coming. The crushing feeling of knowing that no matter how hard I worked, it was never going to be enough. Still, I carried on, driven by the love I had for my mother. She had supported me all my life, and now it was my turn to be there for her. I would do anything to help her, even if it meant sacrificing my own well-being. One afternoon, as I was sitting in the staff cafeteria on a rare short break, I was handed a letter from the hospital administration. I opened it, expecting some routine memo, but instead, I found a formal reprimand. Apparently, I had made a minor documentation error in a patient's chart. Under normal circumstances, it would have been a simple fix. But the hospital had recently adopted a zero-tolerance policy for mistakes in medical records. And the reprimand came with a temporary pay cut. I felt a knot form in my stomach as I read the letter again. This pay cut meant that I would barely be able to cover half of my mother's medication. I would have to make impossible choices, deciding which treatments she could skip to save a little money. all while working harder than ever just to keep up. It felt like a punch to the gut. And for the first time in a long while, I couldn't hold back the tears that welled up in my eyes. Just then, my phone buzzed. I looked at the screen and saw that it was from Dr. Ryan Harris, a former boyfriend of mine. We hadn't spoken in months. Ever since our breakup, he had come from a wealthy family. And though he had initially seemed kind and caring, I had come to realize that he was controlling and elitist. Our relationship had ended when I could no longer ignore the way he treated me. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Carla, we need to talk," Ryan's voice said, cool but purposeful. "Meet me outside in 10 minutes. I didn't know what he wanted, but I knew it wouldn't be anything good. We hadn't parted on the best terms, and he hadn't reached out to me in months. Still, I needed to hear what he had to say. When I met him by the staff entrance, I could tell by the smug look on his face that this wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation. He leaned against his luxury car, looking as if nothing had changed in his life. "How are things?" he asked, feigning concern. "I'm managing," I said, folding my arms. He chuckled softly, his voice dripping with insincerity. "I heard about your pay cut. This hospital can be tough, especially if you don't have the right connections." I didn't like where this was going. I could already feel the familiar resentment rising inside me. "What are you getting at?" I asked, wary of his next words. He gestured to his car, the symbol of his privilege. "If your finances are in trouble, I can help you out. My family has connections. My father's on the hospital board. And we could get your mother into better facilities. Top-tier care." I frowned. I had no doubt that he was offering help, but I also knew there would be strings attached. "What's the catch?" I asked bluntly. Ryan shrugged, a smug smile spreading across his face. "Come back to me, Carla. We were good together. Think about it. Your mother could have the best care money can buy." The proposition was infuriating, and I felt my temper rise. I had left him because I could no longer tolerate his manipulative ways. And now he was trying to buy me back. He laughed, as if he thought I would cave. "Who do you expect to bail you out? Carla? Some random homeless guy from the he said, his voice laced with derision. His words stung more than I wanted to admit. I thought back to the man I had helped in the his quiet gratitude, the dignity in his voice. I knew I couldn't rely on Ryan or anyone like him. "I don't need your help, Ryan," I said, turning away. "I'll take care of my mother's care on my own." His mocking voice echoed in the parking lot as I walked away. "You're making a huge mistake, Carla. Pride won't pay the bills." I didn't look back. I didn't need him. I didn't need anyone like him in my life. But as I walked back into the hospital, my thoughts lingered on the man I had helped in the Who was he really? Where had he gone? And why couldn't I shake the feeling that he would come back into my life again? In some way, when I least expected it, days turned into weeks, and life seemed to continue its relentless pace. I focused on my work, my responsibilities, and the ever-mounting stress of balancing my mother's medical bills and my own survival. But there was something about that mysterious man from the that I couldn't shake. Despite the chaos of the hospital and the never-ending cycle of exhaustion, I kept thinking about him. I wondered where he had gone after I helped him, why he had disappeared so suddenly, and, most of all, why his face haunted my thoughts at the strangest times. One afternoon, I walked into the hospital's staff lounge, taking a much-needed break after another long shift. As I sat down with a cup of coffee, my phone buzzed. I had been expecting a call from my mother's doctor, but instead, the notification showed an email from the hospital administration. My heart skipped a beat when I read the subject line: "Invitation to Annual Charity Gala." It was the hospital's most significant event of the year, a fundraiser for those who couldn't afford medical treatment. The thought of attending such an extravagant event seemed laughable. My finances were tight, and I didn't have a dress for an event like that. Still, I opened the email, skimming the details. The surprise came when I saw that the invitation was not only for me, but it also mentioned that an anonymous sponsor had covered the cost of my ticket. Confused and intrigued, I had no idea who could have done such a thing. Could it be the mysterious man from the The more I thought about it, the more the possibility seemed far-fetched. But it couldn't have been anyone else. He had left such an impression on me. And the idea of him helping me from afar, someone who had so little of his own, felt like an answer to a prayer. I quickly confirmed my attendance, hoping to get some answers, even though I wasn't sure what I was walking into. The night of the gala arrived, and I found myself standing outside the glittering facade of the Westfield Grand Hotel. It was a luxurious venue, an ornate building that reflected the bright city lights. I hesitated for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest. I was out of place here, surrounded by doctors, donors, and influential hospital board members. I had never been to anything so grand in my life, and the thought of walking through the grand entrance in my borrowed dress only made me feel more self-conscious. Still, I steeled myself and joined the procession of elegantly dressed people. Inside, the atmosphere was opulent and overwhelming. The scent of fresh flowers filled the air, and soft orchestral music played in the background. The room was filled with the hum of excited conversation, laughter, and the clinking of champagne glasses. I had no idea what I was doing here, but there was a sense of anticipation that hung over the event. I looked around, half expecting to see him, the man I had helped in the But he wasn't there. The evening proceeded as galas often do, with speeches and presentations from hospital administrators. I tried to push away the lingering thoughts of the man, reminding myself that he was likely just a fleeting memory. But just as I was beginning to relax, the host of the evening, a hospital board member, took the stage to make an announcement. "We have a special guest with us tonight," he said, his voice booming across the room. "A philanthropist who has made a significant private donation to support our hospital's mission and to help those in dire financial need." I barely heard the rest of his speech as the spotlight turned toward the stage. My heart leapt into my throat when I saw the man step forward, a tall figure, composed and confident, wearing a sleek black tuxedo. He was strikingly familiar, though I couldn't place why. His hair was neatly styled, and his posture was poised, as if he had done this many times before. The crowd clapped politely, but as soon as he spoke, my breath caught in my chest. "My name is Alexander Carter," he said, his voice rich with emotion. "I've had the privilege of supporting Greenfield General for many years. But tonight, I'm here to do something very personal." I felt a jolt run through me as recognition hit. This man, this Alexander Carter, he was the one. The man from the The man I had helped. The man who had disappeared in the night. His gaze swept the room. And when his eyes met mine, something unspoken passed between us. He paused, his gaze locking onto mine as if time had frozen. "My journey through life has been marked by hardship, loss, and the quest for meaning," he continued, his voice steady but tinged with vulnerability. "Some months ago, I found myself in a difficult place, and I wanted to know if there was still kindness in the world. So, I disguised myself and sought out the help of strangers." The room went silent as the weight of his words hung in the air. I couldn't believe it. He had been the man in the one I had helped. And now, here he was, standing before me, about to reveal the truth behind the kindness I had shown him. "I ended up in this very hospital," he said, his eyes still locked on mine, "where a nurse named Carla Taylor showed me what it means to be truly human. She didn't look at me with pity or judgment. She simply treated me as though I mattered. And that, in itself, gave me hope." The room erupted in applause, but all I could hear was the thudding of my heart in my chest. I stood there, stunned, unable to move or speak. It was as though my whole world had been turned upside down in the blink of an eye. He wasn't just a homeless man. He was someone far beyond that, someone who had tested people's sincerity, who had been through his own pain, and who had come out the other side with a heart full of gratitude. As the applause continued, I stood frozen, lost in the realization that the man I had helped in the was someone entirely different than I had ever imagined. And in that moment, I knew that nothing in my life would ever be the same again. As the evening continued, I found myself in a whirlwind of emotions, trying to process everything that had just happened. Alexander Carter wasn't just the man from the Ur. He was a man who had turned my world upside down in the most unexpected way. The applause and the chatter around me felt distant, as if I were standing in the middle of a dream, trying to make sense of what had just been revealed. After the announcement, Alexander approached me, his eyes still filled with gratitude and warmth. He stepped closer, his voice low and sincere. "Carla, I never got to thank you properly for what you did for me that night. I didn't mean to disappear like that. I panicked, but I've never forgotten your kindness. I hope you understand why I did it." I could only nod, overwhelmed by the weight of his words. In that moment, everything that had felt uncertain in my life, the struggles, the pain, the financial burden, seemed to fade away. I had helped someone in need, and in return, he had changed my life forever. He didn't just offer financial support. He gave me something far more profound, the belief that kindness still mattered in a world that often felt cold. As the night came to a close, Alexander walked me outside, his hand gently holding mine. We talked more, sharing stories, dreams, and the realization that our lives were now intertwined in a way neither of us could have predicted. Life had a way of surprising us, of teaching us lessons in the most unexpected ways. And just like that, two people from completely different worlds found a common thread in kindness, empathy, and love. If you found inspiration in this story, don't forget to subscribe to Life Stories for more soul-stirring tales. Our journey through the magic of heartfelt storytelling continues. Stay tuned.